Our topic today is lesson planning, and this is really, I'm so glad to get to present this, because this is, to me, this is like, do you remember when a teacher would give you like a blank piece of paper and a new box of crayons, and you could just do anything with it, and if your picture turned out nice, you just, oh, look. That's kind of what lesson planning for me is like, if I don't worry about it too much. That analogy actually works for lesson planning too. If you know how if you're worried about your picture, nothing seems to come out right. You just, oh gosh, that's not good, and you throw it away, and oh gosh, that's not good, and you throw it away, and you go through a whole ream of paper. Well, the same thing with our lessons. If we worry too much about them, I don't know, it just, nothing seems good enough. But if you just think of it like a new box of crayons and you get to do anything you want with it, that's, the nice feeling behind it. So the difference for us, though, is that, like you guys know from, the training you've been getting, in EFL, we're looking at so much more than just intellectual knowledge, so much more than just filling the head with information. And so much of there's a wealth of, programs out and textbooks and all that you can draw upon, but almost all of it is so geared to just the head. And we are trying to bring in the whole being. And so that means pretty much we have to create it ourselves. Every once in a while you'll find something that's really good, but by and large it's take a little here, take a little there, throw out the rest, and so it's the work of it, but it's also the joy, and it's so creative that way. And it is what then helps our lessons be really, really in tune with our kids. And like everything Usha's told you from the beginning, so much of everything we do is based on attunement to our kids. How could a mass-produced thing match? They don't know our kid. They know children, but they don't know our kids. And like I said, so much of it's just geared to intellectual knowledge. And of course, that's how most of us were taught. Most of us, what we got in school was pretty much that kind of thing. And so it means we have to not only be in tune with our kids, we have to attune to the subject matter, we have to attune to what kind of out there in the ether this subject matter can offer, and draw that down and build it into our lessons. So I want to talk today mostly about depth and meaningfulness. So what I mean by that, by depth, is that it touches the child's inner growth. It touches them directly. Meaningfulness has to do with their life. It connects to their life. And that goes across the ages. I was listening at one of the EFL programs that was taught up at the village a couple years ago. Nitai was talking about, he said, until the intellectual years, so up till about 18, the vignettes are more important than the big picture. It's more important for them to, if they're, he was thinking a lot of like high school, but it goes down too. It's more important for them to be able to recognize what was behind the fall of the Roman Empire. What was their motivation? What mistakes did they make? What things did they do right? How can you take that into your life and say, oh, I'm a little bit like this in this situation? Then to know the whole, all the dates and the whole, first this happened and then that happened and that happened. That's later. But up until that point, it's like what touches them. So central to what we're doing is depth and meaningfulness. Let me put that here. meaningfulness. I'm putting down the wrong word. I'm writing mistake.
Just do spell check.
Well, I do that. Ooh.
Whiteboards usually don't come with that feature.
I know.
Yet.
Okay.
Yes.
So, what I'm going to do, because we only have not even an hour now, is I'm going to touch on a lot of different things that we do, parts of EFL that will help you develop depth and meaningfulness. And then later on this morning, when we start working with like your actual lesson plans, it's like, okay, in this situation, I'll draw upon this. In another situation, it's not that you have to do all of it. It would just be completely overwhelming. Okay, now, your intuition is going to be absolutely the most important thing in this. Because like I said, you're going to have to pull it down out of the ether. You're probably not going to find it, in things that you can just get from Scholastic or what have you. And so your attunement to your kids, it's like you tune into them, and, well, you know this, I know you know this. You're thinking about somebody and an idea just comes into your mind. It's because you're connected with them. And so that attunement to your kids is going to help you draw what you need, and it's going to be a lot better than what you're going to figure out with your head. I taught with a teacher when my son was real small and I went back to teaching. I needed to co-teach with someone because I couldn't be there that many hours. And I taught with a teacher, Tim, who was a master at flowing from his intuition. And I'm not so quick like that. I have to really give it time. But he was just a master at that. And he would come in with a story, a project, a way to assess it. And so magnetic. And I remember saying, well, Tim, when did you put this all together? Because he was a busy guy. And he said, well, I just last night driving home from volleyball. But what he did after enough time of that, I reckon he just opened himself to letting that flow come. Or one time we were doing our end of the year trip. We were going camping, and he showed up. We're loading up, the vehicles and stuff like that. This man showed up, camping, mind you, with a cordless drill and about a 10-foot 2x6. I said, Tim, why are we taking that camping? He said, I don't know, I just felt like bringing it. Well, we got to our camping space, and through the winter, some water had made like a little channel between, we knew there was this big place for all these tents, but now there was this little creek going right through the middle of it. And he said, oh great, we'll build a bridge. So he needed that Makita drill and he needed that, board. And I thought, this happened to him all the time. It's just like, oh, I'll do this, oh, I'll do that. And so through our intuition, so much will come to us that it's like where the magic is, and it's where it's beyond reason, but it's the special things that really count. So, you can it's not that you don't think about your lesson plans, but you also have to, it's not that you don't even use ideas from other sources, but don't be afraid to let it go when inspiration starts coming, because that's going to be what really connects with your kids. Let's see. Also, when I talk about meaningfulness, this is where we want to really think about what fits our children's lives, where they're at, what's in their world. Right now at the village, we've got all these geese. We've got lots of geese, and I think one is nesting on the roof of our outdoor classroom. It's there every day. It's not there all the time, but it's there every day. And we keep looking and thinking, is that a nest? Is that? We can't tell because it's loaded with pine needles. And so there are pine needles everywhere, but it looks like she's laying eggs. We'll see. But we got all these geese. We've got brand new baby goats. We got a donkey. And so I was trying, we could do gorillas in Africa. But what does that have to do with their lives? Right now, their lives are about geese and baby goats and the donkey. If I'm going to do animals, that touches them. If I want to do trees, we have an apple orchard, we have pine trees, we have cedar trees, we have, that's right where they're at. Now, I have first and second grade this year. As the kids get older and their experience, they can take in more mentally, they can relate to more that's out of their experience. But with the little guys, you start with their direct experience. And so, or if you're doing rocks or something like that, to start with those rocks that are in their life, then it's like they get that hook that's connected to them, and then they can reach out beyond that. And also, meaningfulness in the whole of their being. If they're struggling, say, with social issues in your class, or you feel like they're ripe not that you have to start with problems at all, because a lot of times it's most helpful. You see, they're really starting to get this. That's their edge. Let me stretch them from their point of success. It does, it's easy to think about, this is a problem, because it can catch our attention because things aren't going so smoothly where there are problems. But if you think of where are they at in success right now, and can I stretch them from that point? You're building positive upon positive upon positive. And when we're feeling good about ourselves, when we're feeling positive, we're actually more able and willing to work on the things that are a little bit hard for us. If you already, we're people just like they are. They're people like us. And if we're feeling a little bit down or a little bit defeated, it's not our strongest starting point, And so if you can, in your lessons, think, how do I build in? If, say, you feel like they're real, say, social issues, because I mentioned that. If they're strong in that and you want to stretch them, so then you build in maybe cooperative learning experiences into what you're doing. So they see, they get to experience more and more of that. Or maybe you build in a service element, something that they love and they take to another grade and they share it, or they can co-teach something, or we do this naturally. This isn't new. You know how for years and years you'll take somebody who's been struggling with reading and they're getting it now, and so you have them go to somebody maybe in a lower grade and you have them work with that person's reading, and it just fills them. They feel so good. So it's not a new thing. We've done this as teachers, but when we bring it consciously to our awareness and think, I feel my kids' readiness for this. Let me consciously build it in. Then what we're teaching them touches them and has greater meaning. Okay, so let's look at some of the other things. I wanted this other whiteboard because, for years we've talked about fun, that it needs to be, what we do needs to be fun. And I always I knew there was rightness in that. But I worried a little bit that spoiling is not the right word, but everything has to be fun. Something didn't quite seem right about that. But I was given a book by one of my parents this year for Christmas. Usha and I were talking about it. It's called Coyote's Guide to Connecting with Nature. And they have articulated many of the things that we have done intuitively. And you know how it's hard to go from intuition to articulate it? Because what comes to you intuitively, often it doesn't come like ABC. It just floods you. And then it's really hard to articulate it. Well, they've articulated what we've done for years and years in certain areas. And I love this, and it's really helped me. They talk about the passions of childhood, and using the passions of childhood as like a teaching tool. And this is also awaken enthusiasm. This is fun. They have another thing, and they talk about the fundamentals. Start with the fun, and then add the mentals. Oh, that's cute. I like that. But so, let me say, I better put this up. Oh, is this, yeah. So think for a minute, back to when you were a child. Now I'm going to do this way. Or the kids that you work with. And think about some of those basic things that all kids enjoy doing. First one, everybody knows, is play. Okay. They love to explore. Okay, so you start. Now this, I'm really going to need your help with spelling. Give me some of the things that you know kids love to do. Anything. Crafts. Pretend.
Help.
Yes.
Experiment. Go outside.
Oh, I didn't write nature down. Yes. Nature, and I'll put outside. Okay. Oh, I put help. Okay.
Use their bodies.
Use their bodies. Music. Movement. Can we do that as use their bodies? Artwork. That's kind of like crafts, but a little bit, different. A little bit different than crafts. Imagine. Is that pretend? But no, it's different, because imagination can be, yeah. Share. Oh, stories. I got music, yeah. Break things. Wow!
See animals.
Yes. There's animals.
Learn.
Absolutely.
Enjoy.
Push boundaries.
Take things apart.
Yes. E-S. There's an E there.
No airplanes.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to stop there. What? Giggle, laugh.
Eat.
Yes. I knew a teacher who did something with oranges. It was so cool. I mean, and it was like taking drill and practice. And she gave everybody one of those little tangerines that's easy to peel. And each section was like, I think they were studying for a test. And so as they reviewed, each section stood for something. And then when they reviewed it in their mind, they got to eat that section. A simple little thing like that. We did the other day, it comes to mind because I had somebody visiting my class, and a teacher from a public school, and she said, oh my gosh, I never would have thought of that. It's a way of practicing spelling that my kids really like. I call it commuter spelling because, when you commute to work, you go back and forth. And so we go outside, and I have their spelling words on a paper. And they have a clipboard and a pencil that's someplace kind of far-ish. I mean, not distant, but certainly as far as from me to Bob, and probably a little bit further, so that they have to hold the word in their mind a little time. And they leave their clipboard and their pencil out there. They come up to me, they see their word, they run back, they write it on their clipboard, they run, get the next word, so they're commuting back and forth, but they're running and they're laughing, their eyes are bright, and they're having to hold it in their mind for a little bit of time before they go back and write it. So it's not just copying, you know. So they're moving their bodies. So if you look at these, and I mean, of course, the list could go on and on and on. The things that kids around the world in any culture are going to enjoy doing. If you have these to guide you, say, can I put some of these in my lesson? You know, can I take what I'm doing and include any of these? You know, stories are a fantastic way to start a lesson. Children will remember a story unbelievably long. I mean, music does that too. Now, this will date me a lot. I remember learning to spell encyclopedia by Jiminy Cricket. E-N-C-Y-C-L-O-P-E-D-I-A, you know, and you remember? Yeah. Well, see, we have the same color hair. So. But music is a wonderful way to really help get things. I remember reading like brain research, and there's something about how music embeds things in the brain. I can't remember what it is. I didn't learn it with music. But nonetheless, it does. It does go into the brain. The same thing with a story. And it's like it touches the heart. And, you know, I remember Tim, the teacher I was telling you, he was doing a study of water. And he came in the first day, and he had a story about this little drop of water who started up in the sky in the cloud. And he was bumping up against some of his friends, and that was fun. And, you know, through the whole story, eventually they stuck together and they dropped down and they ended up in a river, and they, you know, they dropped down into the earth and they got sucked up, you know, into a plant, and they ended up on the leaves, and, you know, and they evaporated up into the sky, and then they ended up back into a river and out into the ocean, and, you know, the whole water cycle through this story. Everybody remembered it. I mean, he could have given them a test 3 weeks later, and everyone would have gotten 100%, because who's not going to remember the story? Everybody remembers the story. You know, and it's got all the information in it that they needed. And it's so different than sit down and learn step by step by step. So putting these kinds of things into our lessons, you know, it's kind of like putting sugar on vegetables or something that you want them to eat, but they don't want to buy or there must be something better than sugar, but you know what I mean. So
Brags.
Okay. Other thing is where. Oh, I don't see it here. You know how kids like to ask questions, but now they ask questions, but they don't necessarily wait for the answer. What about this? And what, you know, why is the fire going like that? But they don't really want your answer. They're asking the question, and the way, because they're saying, join me in wondering about it. They're not saying, tell me the answer. In fact, have you ever noticed if you give a child a real quick answer, it like stops the thinking about it? It's like, period, the end. Okay, got the answer. But if you wonder with them, why do you think the fire is doing that? Gosh. You know, I kind of think the wood, if you watch the wood, and how, you know, and you kind of enter into the exploration of it with them, and the questioning, the answering. Questioning and answering is not like giving them a quiz. We do that as adults. Kids will ask, and then we start saying, why this, why that? And it's like this quiz. But no, wonder with them in the question. You can guide their getting deeper and deeper and deeper into something by wondering with them. and you don't even have to know the answer. Sometimes it's, even if you know the answer, it's certainly better not to tell them, but to let them, guide them in their exploring so that you pull it out of them or you pull it out of their experience. And you know what else are you giving them when you do that? How do I find things out? Otherwise, if every year I have somebody who asks me a question, they're like afraid to count on themselves. They want me to tell them. And that's safe for them. But then they're not learning how to learn. They're just learning how to get a quick answer. And so I want to help them learn how to dive down deeper and deeper and deeper into something so they're all by themselves. They can still know how to get what they're searching for. Let me fill this out just a little bit. So first thing we've got is your intuition. Okay. And the next thing we talked about was the passions. Okay. Now we can also look at stages of maturity. All these things are what you can consider when you're putting your lessons together that will help you connect it with your kids more and with more depth. So if we look at stages of maturity, let's see. Oh, wait, let me go back just a little bit. I'm looking at my notes because there are certain things I just don't, I'm going kind of quick and I don't want to forget. When I was talking about back here, exploring things, also, it doesn't have to be what you're good at. For instance, with the geese, I want to work with the geese, but everything I found was all this just facts and head stuff. And even I found this sweet little book on geese, but it was all just information. So how many of you know of Bharat, Joseph Cornell? Okay, he's a world leader in nature with kids. And so I called him. I said, Bharat, I want to do something with the Canadian geese, but I can't come up with anything that really gives it depth to start with. How do I start? And he said, okay, do this. Take them out, and the first thing is have them just, he said, like we do so often, he said, start with a story. Don't tell them it's about the geese, but make up a story that includes basic things, and then at the end, have them guess what animal it was. And he said that the mystery will keep them excited about it, and you'll be giving them important information. And then he said, then take them out and have them come up with, he said 8, but 8's too, I have first and second grade, 8's too much, probably 5 would be better. Things that they notice about the geese. He said, I actually did this with my wife. I was trying it out. They were at the ocean, and it was a certain kind of little sand bird. And he said that was 2 years ago, and she can still name almost all of those things that she noticed. And he said, see if you can get close. If you can't get close, give everybody their binoculars. But it could be markings on the feathers. It could be, how their feet, how they walk. It could be the shape of their bill. It could be anything like that, but things that they notice. Now that's going to be fun for the kids because it's like, ooh, what about this? What about this? What about that? But what you're doing is you're helping them learn to be quiet. You're helping them tune in to this, not from the outside, but they have to connect with it now. They've got to be quiet or they're going to fly off. And really look, really pay attention, really feel like it's like getting to know them. not just here, but with their own self. And then he said, then give them specific things to look for. What does it do with its neck while it walks? You know, like, you know how some birds do this? You know, or some go kind of up and down when they walk, you know, or see if you can figure out where it's heading as it's walking. Or we do, what we've been doing, because we can hear the geese from our classroom, well, right outside our classroom. So we'll go outside, they're noisy. And I'll say, okay, guys, wait, stop, listen to the geese. How do you think they're feeling? And you can, now we know the sound of somebody's walking down the road. Because there's a certain sound. It's like we're learning their language. You know, and we know when they're going, they're just talking to each other, you know. Because we'll listen first, and then we'll go where we can watch them. And sure enough, they're all just sitting there, you know. And so that tuning, what are they telling us? What are they telling us? Or you get, and they all fly off, you know. And something, you know, something's happened, and they don't feel safe right now. It's a much deeper learning. Then when we go to learn some of the more outward things, this is what they eat, this is what they do, da, 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 da. Although, of course, the eating, we can learn that by watching. We don't have to get it from a book. But, you know, can you see that depth of learning is, I don't know, it connects in a deep, it's more experiential, and it connects, and it'll stay with them longer. Also, when I was saying you don't have to be good, like with music, you know, I still make up songs for my kids, and I'm always embarrassed by it, but they love the little songs. And every year we have what's called Family Entertainment Night, and I always do, it's horribly embarrassing for me because we do musicals. My class does musicals. And because I know that my little guys can learn music, they have ways of making it easy. They can learn poetry and they can learn music. And they can get up there and they can do a performance if what they're speaking rhymes and it's got songs in it. And it's no pressure, like, you know. So I give it to them even though I'm really bad at music. So, you know, you don't even have to be good at this stuff. But it's like I know what kinds of songs connect with my kids. So don't be afraid, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, so let's look at stages. Yeah.
Would you sing one so we know what you mean?
Okay. Oh, gosh. Okay, we did Horton Hears a Who. And so this was the song that went along with the Who's. You all know Horton Hears a Who, with the Who's being little? Oh, gosh, can you turn that off? No. Okay. You may be a tiny one, hardly heard by anyone, but of this I do declare, you have gifts that you can share. If each one will do their part, joining in with all their heart, everyone will know you're here. You'll have nothing left to fear. And they danced with it. Okay, so let's look at stages of maturity. What stage they're in will guide how you can connect the lessons to them. If they're in the physical years, do. You don't have to even talk about it so much. If they get their bodies involved, if they're learning about this world and they're just doing it, they're going to get that. And that's how they're going to learn. It's going to have how they're going to learn with joy. And it's going to really stick. So let that guide you. Involve their bodies. Involve action. In the feeling years, you want to touch them. You know, this is stories. This is music. This is connecting, like those geese.
Do you mind if I interrupt?
Oh, absolutely.
You're giving examples of animals, which is easy to see how to touch their feelings when teaching animals. Give us an example of how to touch their feelings when teaching math or geology or something that less naturally opens the heart.
you know, that's where, like, I feel like cooperative learning comes in, because when they're working with their friends and they're connecting in that way, they really care about, it's like they care about the learning, you know? And so it's not even necessarily the subject matter, although you could do a story. You know, stories at this age are fantastic. And so if you're doing geology, you know, and I don't know enough about it, you could probably, can you make up a story just quick about, like, you know how everything presses down and you get those, what is that?
The strata of the rock?
Yeah, you know, so you could make a story about the formation of that kind of rock, or the mountains and how they change, and you know, you give them that, and it's in their imagination. In the feeling years, it's also a time of great imagination, so you can build in that. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And creativity. You know, creativity has to do with the heart and with the feelings. And so you make up a song. You know, that's a feeling kind of a thing. So all those, the passions of childhood, so many of them connect with feelings. So you think, okay, well, look at those. In the will years, it's what can I do with this information? Can I make a difference in the world? How does it relate to me and who I'm trying to become? You know, or is there some kind of a challenge around it? Let's see if everybody in class can with whatever the subject matter is. But these are the will years. They want to do something with it. They want to feel like their competence and their place in the world. And this is, you know, where am I heading with this? And so in the will years, you know, that's something you want to look at, how to connect with them that way. Okay, we can look at the tools of maturity. Okay. Of course, in our lessons, it's good if we include all the tools as much as possible, because we're going to have kids who have varying tools that are their strength. So you want to build those in if you can. You build in a feeling component to what you're doing, or a physical component, like with the spelling. You know, we build that in. You build a story, you build music, you build challenge, you build the actual intellectual information, all of that. But especially if you see, you know, we want to think of our class both as a whole and as individuals. So sometimes you'll just, you know, because a class builds its own personality and its own magnetism. Some of it's based on who the leaders are, along with, you know, how long have you been inside? For the last 6 months we've been inside because it's rained every day, you know, that kind of thing. It will have its group personality, almost like its group tool, and it'll have its individual tool. The individuals will have their tools too. So as you're looking at building your lesson, you can think, you know, is my class, do I want to direct this lesson more strongly physically, more strongly with a feeling element? Or Usha's in my class and she has a strong need right now. I'm just going to build this lesson around her need. Everybody else can grow from it too, but I'm going to focus only really on feeding her right now. And so you can look both ways, and it's helpful to look both ways, because if you have somebody in your class who's really needy right now and you don't take care of them, you know, you don't start filling them up. Remember, I was listening to some of the CDs earlier, and Usha said, I have wasted so much time over the years trying to teach when the kids were hungry or thirsty. Get them eating, get them hydrated, and then they learn so much more. The same thing, if you've got somebody really needy in your class, and I know you're going to recognize this, you start teaching your lesson and you say, Sam, sit down. You get 3 sentences. Sam, you get to, Sam, Are you being effective? No. So might as well feed him, inwardly what he needs. And the whole class is going to, your lesson's going to be a lot more effective. The whole class is going to learn better. Everything's going to be more efficient if you take care of, if you've got a really needy child, take care of them, in your lesson and what you do. So as looking at tools as a group and individually both, okay? Let's see. 6 areas of the curriculum. Okay. Now you said they've already done this, right? They've done, okay. Okay, so this is another area you can look at. Okay, I'm teaching something, creative writing, okay? And do I want to focus on, because you can take almost any subject and it more naturally will fit into one of the 6 areas of the curriculum, but it can also take, you can take almost any subject and give it a certain leaning. Like if you're doing creative writing and you have kids that are super into the world around them, so you can take your creative writing assignment and make it have a focus of our Earth, our universe. Or maybe you're doing geology, and so you want to take your creative writing and have it be around the subject of geology. And so you can lean it, either because of other subject matter you're working with or because of the kid's natural inclination. And recognizing there is an inner teaching to each one, or an inner possibility to each one of those 6 areas. If you're looking at our Earth, our universe, this is a time, this is a focus that will build that sense of awe. It will offer kids the ability to grow in their connectedness and their sense of belonging to the whole world around them, to their body as a tool for them, because they're learning through physical, so you can build that in. Personal development, if you're looking at personal development and you think, okay, I'm going to put some challenge into this subject. I want them to feel where they're at right now, and we're going to give them that next step. We're going to lay it out for them. This is the goal to reach for, and we're all going to cheer everybody on until we all reach that next step. So you give it that personal development kind of emphasis. You can look at self-expression and communication. That's clarity of mind, clarity of thinking, creativity. So you have what you're doing, you think, okay, I really am overall, I want to have it have this feeling. This is an area I'm wanting them to stretch in, to grow in. And so let me look at, can I take this, whatever it is, and can I give self-expression communication, leaning to it, understanding people. What's the inner gift of understanding people? Well, it's flexibility of thinking. You know what? That's another way of doing that. Or like in my family, when you were going on a trip, okay, that's a 6-hour trip. We do 1 bathroom stop, we can get there in 6 hours and 15 minutes. The goal was getting there. I went on a trip with my husband that was a 3-hour trip. It took us 12 hours to get there. He said, look, let's stop. I thought, you can do this? Oh, look at that. I never knew you could travel like that. I never knew you could take a 3-hour trip and go to have it take 12 hours to get there because you enjoyed the trip and you stopped I didn't know you could do it that way. It's a whole nother way of traveling. And so understanding people, oh gosh, look, Padma does things this way, and everyone does things their own way. I didn't know you could do it that way. It's such an appreciation. It builds such appreciation for all the gifts that people bring to any given. Think of the gifts you've got in your classroom. If we can recognize and honor and uphold all the different gifts our kids bring, one, it builds an incredible sense of school family. but for our own selves. And it's such flexibility of thinking, such gratitude, for we don't have to be everything. Sandy brings this, and Vidura brings that, and all these people. It's a fantastic way of building flexibility and gratitude. And also, you learn to get along with people. And that's going to make a whole lot of positive moments in your life that could otherwise not be so positive. I had a 4th grade class and we were studying Japan, and it just so happened my brother-in-law was in Japan for a year teaching English, and so we were doing a lot of communicating. And I just tell you this for fun. I found this so amazing, but it's what building in understanding people into your lesson can do. When he first started teaching there, in Japan, individuality is not something that's particularly honored. Harmony and humbleness are huge. And so he would, you're teaching a lesson, you say, okay, you ask a question, what about this? No one would answer. No one would raise their hand and answer because it was considered braggy. It was not humble. And so if, like I asked Usha, okay, Usha, what about, whatever the question was, she would lean to her neighbor and say, do you think, even if she knew the answer, do you think da-da-da-da? And then they could both say, well, we think this. Or even when he was going someplace and visiting, and he'd get a little lost, and they have a lot of, at least they did at that time, they had traffic officers, guiding the traffic and stuff, and he would ask, how do I get to such and such temple, or something like that. The police officer would never give him the directions. He would ask a passerby, do you think the best way to get da-da-da-da-da? And then together, they would give him directions. The police officer knew, but you would, and just in America, where we're, I know the answer, my kids, it was like, wow. And so for a couple days, we tried to be so humble, so humble. Oh my gosh, it was beautiful. It was and they got to experience what humbleness was. And so I feel like they grew as much from that aspect of our study of Japan as anything, because it was so new to them. It was really broadening. Cooperation, of course, it teaches compromise, it teaches respect for others. It offers the value of harmony, really considering other people's reality, knowing that you don't always have to have it your way. You don't always have to be the first. You can actually have joy in helping raise somebody else up. It's so beautiful. I love that aspect of the 6 areas of the curriculum. And then, of course, wholeness brings it all together. And so you can take a little piece of this and a little piece of that and bring it all together. But remembering that it's just really important that you really, really touch their lives, make it real to them. So the reason I wanted to lay all this out is when you go about your lesson, building your lessons, and you want to just hold that subject in your mind and sort of see what's trying to come. All of these are things that you can consider. It's not that every lesson has to have every one of these. You'll go crazy. But all of these will help feed you and give you that, oh, I could do this. Or, oh, Joey, I want to address Joey. Joey. George. I want to address George. And I feel this opening in him. He's always up for exploring. Is there a way I can bring exploring into it? Or is there a way that we can build something? Can we, or cook? We're doing geology, and we're gonna, the crust is this, and then we're gonna put in peaches, and then we're going to put in, whatever it is. So all these things can really help us get what we want when we're having to create our own lessons, which we're going to have to do most of the time, which is add depth and meaningfulness to what we do. Okay, so I haven't given you any chance for questions. Does anybody have questions? We're going to practice a little bit later today, because I know, like Usha said, you all have lessons that you're going to be trying to teach, and there's actually a lesson planning form that we'll go through a little bit. But, yes?
Well, I'm wondering, I know these are specific to the energy of the class and the individual children that you have each year, but are you guys documenting these ideas and the things that you've done that work so that you can share it with other teachers?
When in the village, we've gone through our accreditation process, and the one biggest thing was document. They'd say, okay, what about this? And we'd have all we did. We always had plenty of stuff according to their questions. They say, where is it documented? It's in my head. We have pictures, and pictures actually can work some. But it's having that, honestly, for us, you're absolutely right. It needs to be documented. Nobody has time to write it down right now. Between teaching and teaching kids, teaching parents, teaching teachers, and all the hats. If we had somebody we could hire that we just talk it into a tape recorder and they, write it down for us or something, it would be really nice. It should be done. Now, the only thing is, and this is what I'd be a little bit nervous about, is
You have to draw on your own.
You have to draw on your own. You know how easy it is. And that's the thing. When you go getting information from things that are already ready-made, be careful. Be careful, because it's easy. It's so easy to just look at it and take it. But it doesn't match your kids. And once it's written down, it's so often on its way to being dead. So you're right. Just examples. But just be careful. If you're drawing from other things, make sure that you don't draw upon it too much. Actually, I told this to Usha. She said, I don't know if you should say this. This was a couple years ago. Often what I do, if I find a program that I think is good, I'll tear out the table of contents and throw the rest away. The table of contents can guide, especially if it's a subject matter you don't know a lot about, the table of contents can guide you, because it says, okay, by the chapter headings, teach this, teach this, teach this. So it guides you what to teach, but then you have to create it according to your kids and stuff. And you don't have the crutch of the rest of the stuff. Throw it away, burn it. So you can't go back. I mean, if you
have to intercede.
Go ahead.
If I stand close to you, the mic picks up.
Oh.
We wouldn't have any teachers if I told them what you just told them.
Oh.
I wouldn't have a teacher. I might have one or two, and they would be, you have this inexhaustible source of energy that not everybody has. So
Keep a few of the chapters. Keep the first 2 pages of the chapter.
I'm just a little bit more, what's the right word?
It doesn't come. If you look at the chapter heading, you don't think it would come?
It would. You have to have some sort of balance. How do I put this?
Pragmatic.
That's the word I needed.
Yeah.
Being a little more pragmatic of what is. I just feel that there's so much you can get from other sources, and you feel inside, how does this fit with my class? How does this fit with Joey? How do I create something that we can build? But if there's a great lesson already created right here that addresses the intellect, and I can tell a story right here that will address the feeling, why should I start from scratch every single day?
And you were not trapped by it?
Mary, do you have something to contribute or ask?
Well, to contribute, actually, I am a first-year teacher. I graduated with my certificate last year. And a lot of what we did was take already made lessons and not be trapped by it, but find ways that you can manipulate it to work with your students. Or like I have a math curriculum book. That is a wonderful book, learning math with movement and games, and it's so much fun. And there are some really amazing curriculums out there. And I go through and I look at the lesson, and some of the lessons, like, it just would not work with the class. And generally there's another lesson right after it that's the same subject, or I can change it a little bit, but it would, I as a first-year teacher would not be teaching if I had to create everything on my own.
And think of your first year teaching. Did you really create everything you taught?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at Ananda, not before. When I was
Okay.
teaching in public school, I just drew upon the curriculum. I mean, we had adopted curriculum, and you didn't even have a choice.
But there's
You just did it.
There's a lot, and I mean, a lot of my teacher training had to do with all of these.
Since we started, there is so much better curricula out there than there was.
The maturity, the passions of childhood. So there's a lot of newer curriculums out that really touch on these things.
And I think Sandy and Karen actually shared some of the sources at the last class that they've drawn upon that do that. So, but you would share your process with the class, and Ollie, what you feel about what she's saying.
So about the book, as you said, tear off the pages. I would say get 10 books, read through that, see what appeals or what fits with your classroom, and just apply that. But I don't think there is a single curriculum or any paper which I would just go by.
Take as it is.
As
Yeah.
it is.
And that would be my only fear, actually, is that it's like a trap, because it's so easy, you know, and they know how to make things look good. But, you know,
But what
if you're in tune enough, you're going to be able to see through. Yeah.
But what you're saying is just right, in that we caution the ones we're teaching to be aware of that.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit like you calling Bharat and asking him for
Yes.
some ideas of how to do the geese. Getting the teacher primed with some seeds of how to achieve this, experience it in their classroom, and then adapt it, you know. just-
Well, and you know, there are like that book that my parent gave me, Coyote's Guide to Connecting with Nature. I haven't thrown one thing out from that book. Everything. In fact, when I asked Bart, because he actually, some of the things that he has done are in that book, and I said, you know, what is this really like? And he said, it's the closest thing to us educational I've ever seen. He said, it's really, really good. And in fact, at our nature conference, our worldwide nature conference in May, I'm going to have them lead some of the things. So there are things out there, like Usha shared, that with the conscious discipline, she said she feels like they've articulated what we do. And there are sources out there. But by and large, I know my own self, I'll only find a tidbit here and a tidbit there. And pretty much, I don't want the rest of the stuff. It's just not, it's not education for life enough. But that doesn't mean there are no sources out there.
This
Yeah.
has really gotten them going. Look at all the hands. Marcia.
Well, I just wanted to say that no matter how you develop your curriculum, whether you get it from the universe through intuition or inspired by other sources, I think the beauty of designing your own curriculum is that you as a teacher are more inspired. So that's what I think is the beauty of doing your own.
If you just know that, be aware, if you're not to fall into the trap of just take what's out there, and be willing to look at it and say, now wait a minute, does this really reflect what we're trying to do? What's the consciousness in this?
But just to say it, that was a different point than the question that I originally asked, which is, as an education for life teacher, applying these
Yes.
particular aspects and then doing some documenting of that
Yes.
so that new teachers
Yeah.
can see how that applies.
Yeah.
Because they've learned their training, how
Yeah.
other things apply, like that anatomy thing that Karen,
Bloom's taxonomy.
taxonomy
Yes.
or whatever, they've learned how those apply, so we can
Right.
show them how these apply.
You're absolutely right. I was 30 some years ago.
So the curriculum that was available when we were starting out, I mean, it was all linear and intellectual. There's a whole lot more understanding now about what kids need to learn. Yes, Vidura?
Well, I have a comment, and not all of you know that I'm not a teacher and just auditing this class, but it seems to me that we're very early in the development of this EFL
Yes.
movement. I think it's extremely important that we cling to the core principles that Toby is enunciating, using these factors that separate us from the crowd and uniquely distinguish what we're trying to do. Because everything in the world, as this begins to spread out and we come down from the high point of the purity of our intention and that has been created, everything is going to try to drag us down to a base level of this.
What we're used to.
Everything is out there. So especially when this thing is so seminal, it is extremely important for us to stick to the highest that we're able to achieve. And I think what Toby is giving us this morning is incredibly inspiring to me as to the foundation of what this work is about. So, and I think it's really important to hear it. So.
Yes, and we're going to make her write it down. And I got to go to school with my 4-year-old nephew, who will be turning 5 this month, to visit 4-year-old kindergarten. And so I was assured that it was different with the other teacher. But long story short, this was actually the aide who's going to be a teacher next year. And there was a Spanish teacher in the room, and there was another aide in the room, and I'd say there were 15 4-year-olds. And it was unbelievably, like I said, I felt like I could, when I was with the children, I felt like it could be an Education for Life classroom completely. But when I saw this teacher, the Spanish teacher and this teacher, not the aide, interacting with the children, something was missing that's here in this school. And it's here that has been in all the Education for Life schools that I've been in. And I thought, well, what is it? She's saying everything right. I couldn't find anything wrong with any of her interactions with the children. And finally I thought, I know what it is. It's as if there's a glass wall between her and the children. And she's saying everything right, and she's doing the right things, but I didn't feel it coming from her heart. And when I figured it out was when I saw the aide. And this little boy came in the classroom, and he was telling the teacher, the aide, the elderly aide, who was actually a retired teacher, who came back to help because the main teacher was out. And he was telling her something, and his face was just infused with enthusiasm and everything. And she looked right at him, and she was just so focused, heart to heart with him, and responded to him with a question. And it wasn't coming from saying the right thing or the right philosophy. It was just, she was just heart to heart, speaking soul to soul. And I thought, that's what's different in our schools, is that every single teacher has this respect for each child's, maybe not their behavior, but this belief that they are a reflection of divine energy, or like a wave on the ocean of divine energy, and that deep inside, if we could uncover all the dross, there's just pure light. And that this, more than an attempt, and a willingness to be in the heart and try to speak to each child as a soul, as a child of God. And that was missing. And I just thought, it really doesn't matter how perfect the curriculum is. It really doesn't matter how perfect the philosophy is. It's all about your relationship with each child. That's the core of the classroom. And if that's right, you could use the worst curriculum in the world, and your energy will infuse it with love and with inspiration. So I want to start with that just to say, don't get panicked about writing curriculum. Yes, this is extremely worthwhile, and yes, if you're just starting out in 5 years, you're going to be able to create curriculum that we can't even imagine, that Ronnie and I have never even dreamed of. But right now, the most important ingredient is your centered presence and your love for them. Not a personal love. I'm not talking about a love of like, Glenda, you're so sweet with those blue eyes, and I just, I love that necklace. Come sit on my lap. No, that's good too. I don't mean there's anything wrong with that, but that love that goes beyond her physical being and her personality, that's just a recognition that here is a spark of the divine, and a respect and an openness to know that I'm not only here saying she's the student and I'm the teacher. I'm not only here as her guide and her teacher so that she learns to read another, to increase her reading level another grade level this year, and to teach her to say please and thank you. I'm also here just to share this life's journey with her and to learn from her as well as teach her, because every single person who comes to us has something to offer. And sometimes it's like I write about in Common Compassionate Children. One day it was the little girl who was so much more in the heart than I was, that she noticed I was sitting at my desk busily trying to write lesson plans as the kids came in the door or check papers or something, and I was just saying good morning, hi, and she got up and came around the desk and put her arms around me and said, you need a hug. And I sat up and, oh my gosh, where was I? They're here. I need to recognize each of these beings, So in that case, she taught me be present. It was a spiritual lesson. Sometimes they teach us lessons that aren't as easy to learn. Like when they want to teach us patience. They don't want to teach us patience, but we need to learn patience. We need to learn to dive deep beyond this behavior to find out what insecurity, what fear, what anger, what problem, what low blood sugar, wrong food, whatever it is motivating this disharmonious behavior. And when we have that attitude of that we're there to learn as well as to teach, you feel it. You feel it when you go in the classroom, and there's just so, I've had people say it. Remember I talked to you about the Korean woman that came to our school, and she came and she said, I've been visiting all these schools, and this is the first one I've seen where all the children are smiling. It wasn't recess. It wasn't, they weren't playing a game. It's just, but they were smiling. They weren't, I don't mean they were grinning, but they looked, there was an inner peace that was coming out. So I want to start with that because it's the most basic thing that I'm thinking about right now this morning. I gave you a handout. I've seen this expressed in different ways about how you learn, that some of us learn by being told and by auditory. Some of us can hear a radio program and remember it. I used to tease Karen and say she must be an auditory learner because she could sing any song words that would come up from our, we're the same age, so it goes way back. She'd break out into the song and know all the words. And all I could do was, the most popular line of it, I want to hold your hand. What else is there? I don't know. She can sing it verse by verse, so she learned what she heard. Some children have to see it. I know I was one of the ones that have to see it, so I so appreciated this. This was so helpful to me. And as teachers, we need to remember some children need to see it, some children need to hear it, some children do better if they can do both. Some children need to move around while they hear it, right? Some people, you all know that. All you educators know about kinesthetic, auditory, and visual learners. But also, how do we learn best education for life students? Through first class experience. So, and all those profound lessons in life, like that one about being present, when the little girl came around and gave me a kiss and said, you need a hug. The profound lessons in life, we always learn them through experience. It's not because someone tells us. It's through experience from babyhood, what we experienced in our home. And then, yes, what we bring to the experience, and do we benefit from it, or do we become bitter from it? Do we accept it and grow from it, or do we reject and become contracted? That makes a difference. But we learn best through experience. So as Narani was talking about this morning, the experience of going out and listening to the geese. If you can't go out and listen to the geese,
a recording from the library of the bird calls and a film of the geese if you're living in, and of course in Portland we have a lot of Canada geese. But if it were penguins, we couldn't go out and do that, but we could get a little closer, but we could go out and experience birds. So but it's not just that. It's not just let's build a volcano, but let's just don't study the volcano, two-dimensional volcano on the page. You know, it's a lot of fun to build a flower volcano and put, what is it you put in it?
Baking soda.
Yeah,
and
baking soda and vinegar and have, yeah, but, you know, some children can learn geography by looking at a map. Others, very few though, others need to actually have that map at their desk and label it. And they go to the map and they look back and they go and they look back and they learn it that way. You know, other children, I just always loved it that at the school in Nevada City they had the United States of America on the playground, and they have that at Montclair Public School here in Beaverton School District here. And so that you can go out there and have the kids say, everybody go to Texas. Okay, and so they all run to, or maybe 3 at a time. Everybody run to Texas. Where's Massachusetts? You know, all of a sudden, it's like she said, it's a passion of childhood. It's a game, and they care. You know, who cares where it is on that board? Or another way to make it experiential to them, where do their relatives live? Go home, find out where all their relatives live, and then give each one a different colored push pin and have them go up and find the state where their relatives live and let them put that in. You see the difference, don't you? And how you can learn geography. And just those 3 examples through experience. So everything I'm talking about are the actual direct experience part of the lesson. And Toby's going to, or Narani, is going to review in a minute the flow learning, which is awaken enthusiasm. Who knows what's next? Anybody? Focus attention, and then the direct experience, which is the meat of the lesson, and then share inspiration. You don't have to do the share inspiration after every single lesson, but you certainly need to do it daily, and you certainly need to do it at the end of any unit. And so I have brought, for your benefit, a couple of sample lessons that come from this book, A Swim Through the Sea. It was written by a former Education for Life teacher, and I brought 2 that Karen has used. So I asked Karen, when I saw this first one, I thought, well, I know she's doing that, right? She just did this last term, she and Sonali, with Ocean Life. Is that the name of the unit? I forgot what we called it. Oceans, at any rate.
Something about the oceans.
And I didn't want to violate copyright law by copying too much, but there are actually 3 lessons in here on clownfish. And one of the lessons on clownfish is body, one of them's feeling, one of them's will. And the one that she most recently did is this one on will. So the object of the lesson was that they would, and this is stated in highfalutin language, because they want these lessons to be bought by public school teachers and used, and you have to kind of conform to certain expectations. We don't have to do that, but knows the effects of various visual structures and function of art, knows that an organism's patterns of behavior are related to the nature of that organism's environment. So what you actually do is you create all these little fishies, little construction paper fishies, and Karen, why don't you tell them what you did with them?
This is the camouflage one?
I believe so.
Okay.
That
All
it?
right, so there's the fish, and each child gets fish. Well, I start by having some that are hidden around the room already that I've created. And so they go on a little hunt and see if they can find my fish. And usually, maybe they can find one of them. One of them's still up in my classroom. You could go look around and see if you can find it. But, some of them were hidden so well we couldn't find them at the end. Anyway, then they get different fish, and they color them to blend with some part of the classroom. And then I have to leave the room, so I don't know where their fish are. And then I get to come in, and over the next few weeks, we see what I can find. And then at the end, we all go on a hunt and see how many of the fish, and we know approximately how many there should be because of how many kids and how many they each had. But anyway, it's a lot of fun, and they get a real sense of camouflage color.
And you see the difference in that between telling them, look at the picture in this book, you see how the coloring matches their environment, and they're actually having to look around the environment, find some color, create that, and try to hide the fish. And it's the joy. It brings the joy of learning in. So I'm going to give you these two and just tell you that these are written in tremendous detail because it's a published curricula. That's not what your assignment's going to be. Your assignment is going to be to create one that we'll give you a little later that's going to look like this. This is one page. This is a lesson that Karen created. And Karen is prepared to demonstrate this little lesson to you in abbreviated form. Should we do it before or after you talk about the three handouts that they're going to get?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, well, let's just experience it right now and then discuss what we experienced.
Okay, if I could have a couple of volunteers to bring a chair up front, you're going to be the students. Okay, we're going to start. You guys are going to do just what I do. The only thing is you have to wait for my signal.
Okay.
So you don't do it as soon as I say it, you wait for my signal before you do it. And my signal will be just 2 quick claps like,
Okay.
and I might try to trick you or I might not, you just never know, okay? Excellent.
That wasn't too close.
Yeah.
It was very quick.
Was that two?
I tricked you and I wasn't even trying to. Alrighty, so what we're going to be doing in this activity is we've been learning about some of the vowels and the sounds they make. And just to review, what letter is this?
I.
What sound does it make when it's a short vowel? Do you remember?
Yeah.
It. So if I said a word that had this in it, I might say sit. Okay. How about this one?
Ah.
What's it sound?
Ah.
Ah. Just like in stand.
Okay.
And then we have, this one.
Ah.
Ah. Just like in hop. All right, so what we're going to be doing in our little game is I'm going to say a word. And if I say a word that has ah in it, you are going to stand at my signal.
Ay, ay,
If I
ay.
say a word that has it in it, like if I say cricket, you'll sit when I give the signal. Or if I say a word that has ah in it, like hog, you'll hop. Okay? Should we give it a try?
Sure.
Let's try it with one. Okay, I'm going to say the word pitch. So, do you have the sound in your head? You don't get to move, do you, this time, because you're already sitting. You guys are very good at this. Okay, how about happy? Excellent. All right, next word is dog. Great. Okay, next word is stick. Okay,
Great.
and I could do that also. I could have them write down the letter, or we're learning in my class sign language, so we've learned the manual alphabet. We could also do the letter for each one. Oh. Excellent, students.
Okay, so I think I'm going to sit down and let Narani come up. She's going to talk to you a little bit more about planning a unit, and then she's going to give you time to start.
Now, Usha, my schedule says Melissa's going to do awaken, focus, and direct experience.
Yes, and she isn't in here, so we'll have to do that tomorrow morning. I don't know. Oh, there she is. Let's do it tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Because we need something fun tomorrow morning because she's leading Circle today, which we usually have on Sunday morning. And that'll give us something somewhat similar to do on Sunday morning. Is that
Okay.
okay? Yes. I love the schedule. So I want to change it, may I?
Okay. this is just an aside from what I'm going to do in a few minutes. But when she was talking about the teachers writing down what the children said, all the things the children said, one of the things that when I was saying we were going through the accreditation, when we went through our accreditation process, and they wanted more documentation of things that we did. Also in working with the school starting in India, the last 2 years when we have had groups of people from India come to visit the school, and they love what we're saying, they love what we're doing, but they say, what do you have written down so we can, when we talk to prospective parents, we can actually show that there is growth in the children, because we're looking at not only intellectual growth, that's in, moving ahead academically, that's a given and that's easy to assess and all that kind of thing. But we put so much emphasis on the other areas of growth, that the qualities that we're trying to help the children develop to have happy, fulfilled, prosperous lives, that those are actually being developed. How do we prove that that's happening? And so what we've come up with, it's a very simple way to document. It's been lovely to have to share with parents. Is we have like a form that we have that you can show growth. But the thing that's simple that I do is I have a folder like this that's got a tab for each child, and throughout the day, this has many benefits, but throughout the day, if I notice something in someone, particular kindness, all of a sudden they're willing to climb the trees when they've been fearful before. We go on a hike and they're not asking to be picked up. They do the whole 2 miles without any complaint and with enthusiasm. They pushed through a math assignment that they've been struggling with for a week, and now they've got it, and they're willing, even if they don't have it, all of a sudden they've reached the point where they can keep themselves working on it. And I'll just take a sticky note and I'll write down real quick, Sandy, blah, blah, blah. And I just stick it on the outside of my book. And at the end of the day, it just takes me moments to turn to Susie's page and write down the date, this happened. Another thing, this happened. And then a couple times a year, we actually graph it, and you can show the growth according to what you see in the classroom. But that just write it down just enough to jog my memory for at the end of the day. And oh my gosh, to be able to sit with my parents then and to say, let me tell you, we were doing this activity, we were doing one thing that comes to mind, one of my little girls, a favorite thing, and actually I did it in a couple of the classrooms yesterday, uses sand trays. And I had gotten some new little jewels that they use, and one of my little girls came up to get the sand tray, and she picked up a jewel, and it was a new one. It was really pretty. And she said, Balam, look how pretty this is. Do you want it? And she just handed it to him. And this is someone who in the past has struggled with wanting to be, a lot of me focus. And nothing was, just that was her impulse. And to be able to share with her parents, let me tell you what she said and what she did. They just, it's really nice. And I said it had many benefits. As a teacher, when you're every day writing down these, I also write down if somebody's really struggling, but mostly I'm writing down where they're shining. And every day I'm writing down where these little ones that are in my life are shining. Do you know what it does to my attitude and to my appreciation for them? And to see, it's easy as you go busy through the day. They happen and you appreciate them in the moment, but then they're gone. But to call them back, to have that little reminder, to call them back at the end of the day, my job seems like being in a temple because it's reinforced in me too. And so these are real people, and so we have struggles, and it's easy to focus on the areas that we're struggling with. You go home and, oh boy, phew, but before you've gone home, you've done this. So we've been searching for easy ways, doable ways that we'll actually do. If they're too heavy, too time consuming, you're just not going to do it. This takes moments, and you don't have to sit there with your kids. And, and my kids will say, what are you writing? I'll just say, I'm writing what Sandy did. And that's it, and so anyway, that's an aside. Okay, here's that 3. Yeah. Are you taking Bob, do you want one of these? No? Okay. Okay, so the first page is deciding what to teach. The second page is looking at a unit and determining goals and objectives. And the third page are specific activities, okay? And this is just a very usable guide. You can obviously come up with your own way. So what I'm going to do is walk through this a little bit because this may be helpful for you in planning units, in planning particular lessons. Some people like to have something to guide their thinking. If you're real intuitive and real go with the flow, this may be like a box that you have to put yourself into, and you do better without it. Like the teacher I was telling you, Tim, forget it, he'd never use something like this. But others, this kind of thing is helpful for me because I can get more influenced by something like a set curriculum than I want to be. And this will help not. Okay, so on the first page, deciding what to teach, I'm not going to go through every single thing. You can all read. But as I was going through it, there were just a few things that stood out. What are the needs, interests, and background of my class? What is their next step towards maturity? And so, often what I'll do is I'll just sort of hold my class mentally. And I can sort of sense where they're going. Let me give an example. I had a 5th grade class one time it was mostly girls, and they were heading all of a sudden towards sort of pre-adolescent behavior. These were really good girls. They were not good kids, the boys too. They were not pushing against me, that kind of, you tend to think of adolescence. That's not what I mean. But they were getting all of a sudden that contractive turning in on themselves. Everybody's looking at me. How am I dressed today? All that inward and not a positive way focus. And lots of insecurity starting to come up when they were very strong, secure kids in the past and everything like that. And I thought, okay, I'm starting to, even though they were only in 5th grade, and this is something that we would tend to do more with truly adolescent kids, they were calling forth from me by their behavior needs to help them stay open, help them move out of that me focus into others, and feel very capable. So we didn't have goats in the community that time, but we got 2 brand new 3-day-old baby goats. Because I remembered 2 of my friends who had babies when they had teenage daughters. And those girls did not go through the typical adolescent stuff that everybody else went through. Those babies kept them in their heart and kept them reaching out and caring. And by that, it just countered that kind of me kind of, how am I in comparison to everybody else? So the baby goats, I wanted to give them a big heart, a big dose of heart, and a big dose of caring. So it meant we had to bottle feed them 3 times a day. And then we'd sit outside because it was springtime and do our lessons, and the baby goats are jumping on our backs and stuff. And it really did give that nurture. It gave them an avenue to really nurture and care, and kept that heart soft. And I pushed them academically much harder than I've ever pushed kids before, because what do those adolescents want? Adolescents want to feel capable. They're questioning what they can do. They need to know they can do a lot. And so, we did that, and they did fantastic. And so that holding them, I wish I had the right words to tell you. Do you know what I mean by holding your class? Somehow, you just hold them in your consciousness, and their needs or their vibration or their next step comes to you and guides you. And it will do it. You have to kind of get out of your head a little bit, but it will do that. So, oh, yike. We got to talk faster and not do a lot of this. Let's see. Also, if you teach something and they just don't get it, don't be afraid to consider that you missed the beat on that one. You either taught it in a way, you taught too big a step, or you didn't catch them where they're at. So what? We make mistakes. And so often, I'll tell you, when I started off, if my kids didn't get something, I just did it again, because I thought they didn't listen, or something. It was their problem. And finally I recognized, a lot of the time I just didn't catch them. Big deal. Just do it again. Do it different. It's not like I'm a failure as a teacher. I guessed wrong. I just didn't do it. So change what you did. It's not always your fault, but no big deal. If, somehow you didn't get them, try it again. Try it different. Let's see. Everything else on this page you've had experience with. The second page, goals and objectives, this is a great page for staying EFL and guiding you. Because in this you're asked, what is the essence of this topic in relation to the category I've chosen? What's the heart of what? Not just, the information is there. There's nothing wrong with teaching information. But what else is there? If you're doing Revolutionary War, imagine what made these people think they could ever win that war. Ever. This was, this little ragtag group of people against England, the strongest navy that there was. And they knew if they lost, they would be hung and their families would essentially starve. They would lose everything. What kind of principle, what kind of inspiration makes you take that kind of risk? So when you're on the playground and somebody's saying, go get that ball from so-and-so, and it's your best friend, and you really want them to like you, but you know it's wrong. How do you do it? What do you call forth from within yourself to say no to your friend and say it's their turn, let them have that ball? So you take that essence of that lesson and you apply it to their life. Their lives are changed. They're not just learning stuff with their head, their lives are changed and guided. So look at this. This is good stuff. And then I put down too, because there are a ton of questions on this. You don't have to do every one of these. Be careful that you don't get overwhelmed, that you don't overwhelm yourself and think, oh my gosh, I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do... Just when you hold your class or you hold that subject in your consciousness, what are the most important things, the things that come most quickly and most clearly to you, and focus on those. It's kind of like this. I've been working for days. How do I take 30-some years of experience and get it down into an hour in one class and 40 minutes in the other? It's so hard, so don't do it all. You know, look at what stands out and do what stands out. And save the other stuff, it'll come up later. And then the third part, specific activities, third page, and it talks about like flow learning. I wanted to say one thing about focus attention and direct experience activities, because with really little ones, those of you who have kindergarten and first grade, you may find that focus attention actually needs to come after direct experience. Or focus attention is like 2 sentences. They have to do it. It's like that's what gives them the hooks. That's what, it grabs their attention. That's what gets them into it. It also gives them something to hook the knowledge onto. So with the little guys, you may want to flip-flop them or do focus attention teeny, give them direct experience, and then go back to focus attention, you know? So consider that in what you're doing, because you know you've seen it. You start giving your lesson, and in moments, you know, and all kinds of stuff, you know, get them doing it first, and then you can talk.
Well, welcome. My name is Nitai Duranja, and I want to first of all congratulate you on working through the online video course in EFL. This particular part of the last part of the program is about maybe giving you a little retrospect on what the energy you're going to be tuning into by taking this approach out into your own community. I personally came to Education for Life a long time ago. This is 1972. And had the blessing of being able to start the first EFL school here at Ananda Village, where we're making this recording. Started very simply, maybe partly encouraging the idea that you don't have to have a full, you know, multi-million-dollar plant with all kinds of staff and things to make this thing start. Because primarily what we're talking about with Education for Life is we're working with consciousness, and consciousness doesn't need a big material setting, although it can help in certain situations. As we got back into this century, the whole idea was to try to make things efficient and to start to use the same principles in education that they were using in industry, which is basically how can you mass produce things? How can you create things that are as efficient and simple as possible? So you would get systems that are set up to serve a whole group of people. Reading systems that will work with 20, 30 students at a time, all together. Math systems the same way. And what we're seeing though is we're seeing that we've lost something incredibly important in this process. We've lost the individual student and the individual student's unfoldment as a human being. Education for Life says, let's start anew. Let's start over again. Let's start by working with not only the individual student, but the individual student's consciousness. And let's use that place where we find that student to start to build our curriculum. I'm sure you've heard before, Education for Life is not curriculum-based. It's student-based, child-based. And so when you're developing your curriculum, you really can't plan it all out in advance because you don't know who the children are that you're working with. And those individual students are going to shape your curriculum. It doesn't mean you can't know something. You know, most 4th and 5th graders are going to be learning fractions. Most 1st and 2nd graders are going to be learning reading. But how you approach it in Education for Life is going to be very much determined by those individual students. You might have a child that is just is a natural artist, or someone who's a natural mechanic, or a natural athlete, or a dancer. I remember once I was trying to teach algebra to a junior high school group here, and the class was 8 girls and 1 boy. And all of them, including the boy, were very much drawn to dance. It was the kind of the group passion that they had. And we weren't getting anywhere with trying to solve abstract equations in math. And one day I was just watching them, and the thought came, well, they're dancers. How can we incorporate dance into algebra? Of course, it's not a question that most people have asked in the past, but I got a very clear answer about how to basically choreograph beginning algebra equations. Like, you faced one way if it was a positive number, you faced another way if it was a negative number, you walked forward if there's an addition problem, you walked backward if there was a subtraction problem. And very quickly, that group, they were able to start to comprehend the basics of algebra. Now, I've done it with any other group, because I never had another group that was quite like that one. And so that's what you'll find as an EFL teacher, that your particular curriculum is going to be creative. I thought I'd give you a couple of just samples. One is very recent. It just was something that happened, kind of culminated about a couple of weeks ago, and started a couple of years ago with a student. I'm going to call him Tommy. But he wasn't back in the classroom. He wasn't around his peers nearly as much as most students are. That was which was the issue for him. He didn't know how to behave with his peers. One-on-one with adults, he was actually quite a nice young man. So we jump ahead to this summer. He actually was back in classes last year. He did much better, although still had issues. This summer, I was in charge of the family camp program here. And I knew Tommy's background, and when he came up to me, he says, I'd really like to be in family camp. And I looked at him, I says, Tommy, I says, how are you going to make my job easier if I let you in family camp? And he looked at me, he's like, what are you thinking about? What's going on here? And I said, I know, some of the things you've gotten into the past. I said, but I'll tell you what, here's the deal. Every time I have to talk to you and say, Tommy, please stop doing that, or Tommy, pay attention, or Tommy, stop wrestling around with those other guys, I'm going to charge you an extra $1 fee for summer camp, for family camp. I said, but on the other hand, every time I see you helping make things work better, like working with the other boys to make sure so people take turns, or they're listening to what's going on, or they're trying to follow directions, or anything of that sort, I'll subtract $1 from your tuition. And he looked at me, he says, okay, all right. So we started the week, and I was deeply impressed, because right from the start, he had a mission, and his mission was to try to help make things work. And so I was keeping track of the points, and I wasn't with him all the time, but I was with him a significant amount of the week. And so I came up, it was Friday afternoon, the end of the week, and the boys were starting to have a water fight. It was really hot that day afternoon, but it was a good water fight. It was good energy. I was happy to support it, and I thought, I'm going to go I had some squirt guns I stored away, and I thought, I'll bring the squirt guns out. And so I bring them out, but there's 7 boys, and there's 5 squirt guns, and they're in the middle of this water fight. So you can imagine their reaction. They were just clamoring, me, I want this, I want. And there's Tommy standing there right in the middle of them, and he's kind of all caught up in it, and then all of a sudden he looks at me, and all of a sudden he takes a deep breath, centers himself, and just steps back. Stepped back out of the crowd of boys. And I looked at it, I said, don't you want one? And he says, that's okay. And I said, okay. I said, so we figured out a way to do the squirt guns. And then later that afternoon, this camp was over, so I went up to him and I said, well, here's the tally for the week. He says, I owe you $5. And so I took out the $5 bill and I handed it to him, and he looked at me and he says, I don't need it. He says, I had a really good week. And, bye. So he took off. And to me, it was a wonderful example of a whole basic principle of EFL. You've studied specific gravity and the whole evolution of consciousness that EFL is all about, trying to help students move from heavy to ego-active to light. Well, Tommy has been operating on a pretty ego-active level. And in this particular situation, though, he grew beyond it to what what the whole purpose of EFL is to introduce a child to his own higher consciousness. And so here the little reward system set up for Tommy moved him in that direction. At first he was probably, a little thinking about the reward maybe in the beginning of the week. I don't know. Actually, I didn't even talk to him at the beginning of the week, but he at least was motivated by the idea of rewards. But he was at a point in his life where he was able to begin. Now, I don't expect him to be an angel the rest of his school year, and who knows what will happen, but in this particular situation, he at least stepped over that boundary between ego active and light, and he became a light student and showing a light level of consciousness for that week. And he knows what it feels like, and now inwardly, he has that point of reference to say, if I behave this way, I'm not behaving for the dollar or the reward, but I like to be that way. I like the kind of person I am when I'm working on that level of consciousness, which is the basic goal of Education for Life. You're trying to lift students to their next step. Now, he was ready to go from ego active to light. Some people are heavy, trying to move up to ego active. Some people are light. And the light students themselves, I mean, you can think, well, that's the easy job, but in some ways, challenging the light students is the hardest, because our educational system does not even think about challenging light students in a way that they can really take their next step, because we all have our next step, no matter what level of consciousness we're in. No matter where you are in that spectrum, the job of EFL school is just to take you to the next step. And no judgments. If the child's a heavy level, we've all been heavy in our past at some point. And so you don't look down on them, you just look for those little sparks of consciousness that will draw them up to that next level. In this case, the ego active. And I think you've probably gone through that in some other classes. You can't take a child from being heavy to light in one step. You have to help guide them through that ego active process. So that approach to Education for Life it keeps you directed when you're trying to develop your curriculum, because it's like you come up with something, you say, okay, what's the potential of this activity to raise the consciousness of my students, my particular students? And if you can't give a good answer to that, then don't use that activity, because everything you do, you're trying to put it in there and say, okay, how can we move things up the ladder, to a higher specific gravity? People just because I get this comment so many times, people say, well, that's all fine and that's all great that you're raising consciousness, and you'll be going to ask this question also. They'll say, oh, you have a school based on lifting consciousness. But what does that do about grades? I mean, this school's all about grades and test scores and all that stuff. What does it do? And people will say, oh, yeah, if you're going to try to build character, work on those moral issues, you can't be spending as much time on academics, so therefore you must be anti-intellectual. And I try to help people remember, just as you studied with the stages of maturity, the tools of maturity, that we do value the intellect, we value it highly. We value it in context, though, with the three other tools, the body, the feeling, and the will. And so when we're helping children cultivate their intellect, it's in a more grounded way. It's grounded in action that involves the will. It's grounded in experience that gives the child a feeling experience. It's grounded in the body, helping them to learn to use their bodies in healthy ways. So what you find, though, and what you will find in working with these, is that because the intellect's treated in that way, you actually get more intellectual growth. We started testing our high school and junior high students a few years ago, just with a typical standardized test, like one that's given in various parts of the country. This one happens to have been based in Iowa. And it measures basic intellectual, scholastic goals like reading comprehension, vocabulary development, knowledge of grammar, mathematical ability, those kinds of basic tools. And we ended up with scores that were amazingly high. Basically, that's been consistent now for the last 5-6 years since we started testing. Every year, they score in the top 6% nationally as a group. And people will look at that and they'll say, how could that be? Because you don't spend nearly as much time on it as you would in another school. Like for math, we will have math 3 to 4 times a week instead of 5 times a week. Same with English. But the basic principle that we're tapping into in life is that a child is a whole, and if he's being fed on the emotional level, and he's getting his willpower challenged, and his body is being healthy, his intellect's just going to work much better, much more efficiently than rather just trying to work on the intellect all by itself. I look at it as the difference between organic tomatoes and the kind of tomatoes that are force-fed with fertilizers and injected to look red and pretty and all these things, but they don't have any taste. So it's the same with kids. You can force feed them, and yeah, they can spit out those memorized answers about this theory and that equation and all that stuff, but it doesn't stick. It's not really part of who they are, and it's basically created all the problems that we see in education today that EFL can heal. So as you go about this, it's a great opportunity to help bring a new style of education into your community and then networking around the world. This Education for Life school system is growing. For many years there was just a school here at the village. Then about, I think it's been close to 20 years ago, we started our first branch school in Palo Alto. Since then we've added schools in Portland, Oregon, in Seattle, Washington. We have a school in Assisi, Italy that's entering its third year. There's a brand new school that's just starting this summer in New Delhi in India. So things are just starting to unfold. They'll start to unfold faster and faster, partly because of this course that you're taking. If you happen to be in some part of the world where they're distant from an EFL school, it's impossible to go there and study. So hopefully this way we can spread things more quickly. At this point, I think I'd like to invite in a special friend, a person, because knowing that you're all new to Education for Life, I thought you'd like to meet someone who's also, this is our newest Education for Life teacher. She's going to be starting teaching full-time in about 3 weeks right now.
Hello, my name is Erica, and my journey with Education for Life began when I was a small child. I grew up here at the Ananda community in Northern California and attended the Living Wisdom School here from a very early age up through junior high school. And I'm now returning over a decade later to train and now teach the EFL philosophy that I was raised with. I can think of no better educational system than EFL, something that takes the whole person and helps you improve on your strengths and also guides you through the areas of difficulty in life and really just lifts the student up from all levels. So best of luck to you. I'll look forward to connecting with you through the EFL family, and thank you, Nitai, for having me.
Sure. Just stay there for a second. We'll finish. Yeah, I thought it would be fun so you could see the first EFL teacher and then the newest EFL teacher at the same time. It's as you go out and as you start what you're doing, you need to just realize that you have a lot of help. You could help through directly, Usha Durman, the woman who set up this program, is available. Obviously ongoing, all of the EFL teachers would be happy to email, correspond with you, share ideas. Once we have an annual conference that hopefully you can tune into, all these things. But more important than that is just to remember that because we're working with consciousness, there is a higher consciousness that we can tune into ourselves and we can become an instrument for. It comes up in very, very mundane ways, but surprising. I'm going back now to my early years of teaching, so it had been about my 3rd or 4th year of teaching. And no, I think it was my 2nd year of teaching. And I'm sitting there with this group of children, getting to know them, and I realize I've got one of my 1st graders, and he doesn't know what the truth is. You could call him a compulsive liar. I'm not sure if he could tell the difference between truth and falsehood. But it was a major handicap because it got in the way of everything else we were trying to do. I couldn't trust him. I couldn't ask him a straight question and trust his answer. So it was a big problem. And my first thought was, this calls for a real teacher, or at least a psychologist or somebody. How do you work with a kid that can't tell truth from falsehood? It just keeps lying all the time. And so I was meditating on this and asking for guidance, and I didn't get this flash of lightning. I didn't get any voice of thunder from the heavens or anything. The only thing that popped up was, well, what do I know about lying? And the only thing I knew about lying and working with was the book Pinocchio. And I just chuckled when that came, and I thought, oh, that's stupid. How could anybody be helped by that? And then I started thinking, well, what else can I do? I don't know anything else, and there was nobody else around to ask to get other ideas. So, all right, I'm going to use that. So I went to the library, checked out Pinocchio, and I started to use it as a read-along with the kids. So I'm reading the story, and I'm watching this one boy out of the corner of my eye just to see what happens. And it was almost hilarious because I had a hard time keeping a straight face reading the story. As I'm watching him, his jaw starts dropping, and his eyes start bugging out, and he's just listening with complete rapt attention for the whole thing. And I just, afterwards I dismissed everybody else, and I just said, what'd you think of the story? And he says, that was amazing. He says, wow. And I said, well, do you think, you want to talk about lying and telling the truth? And so we started this little conversation out of it. And then out of that, he said, I said, would you like to work on it? And he says, yeah, I'd really like to work on it, because on some level he was having a hard time with this whole thing too, because I assume he got confused himself telling all his lies. And so we worked out this whole system where he would go out to recess, and I would say, okay, I'm going to come out for 5 minutes of the recess and just watch, see what's happening. And at the end, I'd call him in a little bit before recess was over. I said, well, what happened? And he would tell me. And before, he couldn't even keep his facts straight. He would say, Joey threw a ball and hit Sally. And I would say, no, I was watching. That didn't happen. And then he'd say something else that did happen. I said, yeah, that happened. And anyway, this whole, I guess you could call it a therapeutic system, evolved out of the Pinocchio book. So the reason for sharing that story is, no matter where you are, no matter what your background, no matter what your challenge is, remember, you have the capacity to draw on inspiration, draw on the guidance if you have a guru, a spiritual teacher, and that will be there for you. One of my favorite prayers, I don't know which tradition it comes from, but the prayer is, where thou hast put me, thou must come. And I think because Education for Life is so much based on the teacher's inspiration, the teacher's sense of how to proceed, that's really the core. All the principles are very helpful. The stages of maturity, specific gravity, all those things I found extremely helpful. But they're secondary. They're secondary to that sense of inspiration where you feel your connection with your students. You feel it in your heart, you feel it in your mind, and you just feel like we're here to grow together. We're here to grow together. We're friends. We're not friends in the highest sense, not friends in the palsy-walsy, disrespectful way, but friends in the sense that we're here to work together, and that none of us have all the answers, but we need to learn to listen to each other, and if we do carefully and we keep our goals straight, then success is assured. So good luck, and I would love to hear how things go for you. Bye-bye.